I was born in a part of the world, at a time in a part of the world where, well, godless and God-fearing forces were facing off against each other. I was born the same year the Russians moved into Afghanistan en masse. I was born in a place called Quetta, which in Pashto means the fort. Essentially, Quetta was an outback sort of town, which changed over my childhood. A small outback, not much of a town, not much to do. One ice cream shop, and one barbecue place, and not much else. A whole lot of soldiers, and then the Afghan refugee crisis started to happen, and sooner rather than later, there was more Afghan refugees in the city than city folk themselves. So we moved. We moved down south to the metropolis, and things changed for me personally and professionally and politically. Coming back to so that was my background, and coming back to moving off and meeting Greg, and then coming back to Pakistan after 9/11. It seemed that I've been averting disaster after disaster. In the 80s, my family moved away from a refugee crisis. In the 90s, I moved from Karachi, my adopted hometown, to the US, to the University of Michigan, to Ann Arbor, after an ethnic crisis ripped that city apart. Thousands died. More people have died in the 90s in Pakistan's homebred sectarian violence than the so-called war and terror-generated violence. That's a statistical fact. There was no Osamas and there was no Mullah Omars then. There was just us. So either ways, so I averted that in the 90s. In fact, the day of my one of my final high school O-level exams, there was a rocket attack near my school. And we had to sort of stop short in our exam and come back. The thing is, there was an old Chinese RPG, so it didn't really blow up. So, once again, made in China, I thumped my nose at that a little higher than the next guy. But essentially, came back after 9/11 sort of drove me away from the States as well, because I increasingly just met someone yesterday who said that you used to say that I don't want to be a second-class citizen in the U.S. anymore, and you're kind of starting to feel that. And I was kind of starting to feel that. I had the feds call on me when I was a senior, just dropped in, knocked on my door. What are you doing? Why are you writing for the college paper? Who you're dating, who you're seeing, what do you drive? Why do you drive a black truck? Excuse me. There's questions like that which were invasive, and so I took it back home. I took it a little personally. And I rode the wave of broadcast. Pakistan changed after 9/11, perhaps more than most other countries. Opened up. It is essentially San Francisco in the gold rush, except there is no gold. There's just a lot of, I think they're called terrorists. And it's a really interesting place because it's flooded with some of the best minds in the world right now. You're talking about activists, you're talking about development workers, you're talking about spies, you're talking about political thinkers. If somebody considers Pakistan, you throw a stone and you land a future Nobel laureate in Pakistan right now, because there's so many thinkers in that country, not all of them positive or even moderate, but a lot of them kind of all over the place. But coming back to the topic today, this was Greg's title, and I sort of structured my talk around it: secularity, religion, and revolution in South Asia. Is because for a lot of people, Pakistan was and is a revolutionary state, born out of a trauma. 1 million people killed or so, more than the largest mass migration, some people say, in history, definitely in the 20th century. Couple of quotes here to give you a perspective on what sort of revolution, so to say. And I'm going to, by the way, just a big disclaimer, I'm not an academic. I'm a journalist, and this is kind of a protracted op-ed. There's obviously going to be question marks about academic, Webster's dictionary descriptions. Go right ahead and record them. I'm free to talk about it later on after I'm done. But this is, once again, please treat this as a protracted op-ed versus this is not in any way, as we say, patthar mein lakir. This is not definitely etched in stone. This is just my opinion. Here's a famous quote by the founder of Pakistan, a man who could barely speak the language of the people he represented, also was one of the richest lawyers in South Asia, actually, the richest lawyer in South Asia, and he decided to lead a nation of a people who he couldn't really connect with, linguistically at least. And he said, the great majority of us are Muslims. We follow the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. We are members of the Brotherhood of Islam, in which all are equal in rights, dignity, and self-respect. Consequently, we have a special and very deep sense of unity. But make no mistake, Pakistan is not a theocracy or anything like it, quote unquote. And he said this almost a year into the country's creation. He also went on to say, just a couple of days before the country was officially created, and he said, you are free to go to your temples, you're free to go to your mosques, you're free to go to any other place of worship in this state of Pakistan. You may belong to any religion, caste, or creed. That has nothing to do with the business of the state. Now, this is the most oft-quoted thing. This is our Declaration of Independence, right? To give it some context for you guys. And the thing is that now there's actually increasingly there's question marks about a country which sort of started on a very firm secular base like this. There's tons of other quotes, by the way, by the same gentleman. His name was Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And just like he changed his name was actually Muhammad Ali Jinnah Bhai. Just like he's changed his name and made a construct which was more sellable, he also tried to do the same with the country he created. He tried to make a construct which was more sellable. And at that time, not everybody was on board. If you look at the numbers, not every Muslim in South Asia agreed with the idea of a Pakistan. Not every Muslim moved and opted to live in Pakistan. In fact, Jinnah's own family opted to stay back in India. His own family. So Pakistan started on secular yet tentative roots, and then something went wrong. To put the last 6 decades in a sort of fast forward, wrap, an Anglophile imperialist military, and I say that imperialist in the older sense of the term, in the sense that a traditional military, which thought that was a good thing to remember the patterns of the British Raj, went on to rule the country, went on to get and garner support by this very country's government. In fact, the Pakistani military went on to, decade after decade, assassinate, kill, cow, and just completely exile the leadership. Any sort of leadership, on the whole, by and large, was either co-opted into the military's own combine with what is the bureaucracy as well, another tenet of imperialism in the classic British term, not in the neo-American term at all. And it went on to, create an army which was the state within the state. It went on to serve all sorts of interests. It became, in a lot of ways, also the most mercenary army in the world. For the Americans, it fought the Soviets. For the Saudis, it created madrasas to counter Iran's influence in that region. For the Chinese, it continues to arm itself against the Indians. And it's sort of the réseauté, so to say, of the Pakistani military today is interesting. It has, obviously, it's always been India-centric, but it also continues to use God as a construct and religion as a construct to essentially prop itself up. The facts on the ground are the following. There's 3 times as many teachers as 3 times as many soldiers as teachers in Pakistan today. Most of the budget, we don't really know what the budget is because those numbers aren't released, but most is, you're verging on somewhere between 2/3 or thereabouts of the budget of the entire country in very loose terms. These are very hazy, unquantified terms, but goes into servicing the military. There's been no real movement on part of, even though technically Pakistan is a democracy today, these are very generalized, like I said, fast-forward terms I'm giving you. Even though Pakistan is a democracy today, there's been no actual serious land reforms. There's been really no serious tax reforms. while there's a liberal party, liberal in a very loose sense of the word, where there's a liberal party in power, they're not liberal in the classic sense of the term. They're not. They're liberal when it comes to, for example, talking about liberalism, but they're not liberal when it comes to actually putting the money where the mouth is. The country's prime minister is also one of the biggest tax evaders in the country itself. This is a documented fact. And overall, xenophobia, other things which we haven't seen, I didn't see growing up, is on the rise. I can document that later on in my analysis. But Pakistan, to give you guys, for the economists among you, the dichotomy is that Pakistan, most states are political economies. Most states conduct business based around the concept of politics going hand in hand with your money. So you're going to fight wars till they're affordable. Otherwise, you're going to stop fighting wars. You're going to, deal with the Mexicans or the Canadians till it's good for you economically. When it's not, you're going to switch back. So politics and economics goes hand in hand. That's how most countries in the world want to become, Democrat or not. Pakistan is fast becoming increasingly unsensible security state. From a sensible political economy which watches its muscle as it flexes its muscle according to how fat its wallet is, Pakistan is increasingly looking like it doesn't care about how fat or rather how slim its wallet is, but continues to flex its muscle. And if we are to believe the Washington Post, the muscle is around 105 nuclear warheads thick right now. 105, which makes it the fifth largest nuclear weapons state in the world, with the weapons platforms which can hit now beyond Israel into Europe. FYI. Anyways, moving on. Across the border, because this is not just a Pakistan-centric talk, but I am a bit of a Pakistan specialist, but still it's good to put things in perspective. Across the border, India continues to thumb its nose at Pakistan in so many ways, so many interesting ways. Firstly, the Indians have a fantastic, and it's a great, if I was an Indian, I'd say to any Pakistani I'd meet, we have more Muslims than you. It's true. They have more Muslims than Pakistan. The Indians say, well, you're the second largest Muslim country in the world after Indonesia, but we're the second largest Muslim population in the world. That's like saying who won, Bush or Gore, right? So, kind of. So, essentially, and they're right. A lot of Muslims in India did not cross the border. In fact, this is not really a scientific methodology to figure out how great things for Indian Muslims are, but the Muslims of Bollywood is dominated. At least the men, Muslim men dominate Bollywood. This is not a scientific yardstick at all, but it sort of goes to show something which is relatively more diverse and tolerant about Indian society. India has its Achilles heels as well. In the Indian Intelligence Service, for example, this I didn't know, just an Indian friend who's a reporter for the Press Trust of India, just right before I left, said it to me, and it was a goodbye dinner he'd held for me, and he said, well, we have Achilles heel you guys don't know jack about. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, and nobody talks about it in the Pakistani press, but I'm telling you, not one high-level operative in the Indian intelligence services is ever a Muslim. Not one. And he's like, that's one serious Achilles heel we have that nobody really talks about, but that's a problem we have. He also went on to show other things. He said that not one Sikh, this is not just Muslims, not one Sikh has been on a VIP security since a couple of Sikh bodyguards assassinated Indira Gandhi in 1984. Jawaharlal Nehru's daughter and India's fifth or sixth elected prime minister.